The law has a reputation of being, in many respects, genteel, you know, law books studied, finesse. But do you come across sometimes being like a bull in a china shop, Bill?
No. What happens is there are places for lawyers like that. I'm not saying there's anything bad about that. You should practice law in the best interest of your clients. When a gentle touch is required, if I can't do it, my associate does it. But when a person, I represent people that are in desperate situations. There are a lot of lawyers that are better negotiators than I am. And I did some negotiation in high school, but that was a different type of negotiation. I did negotiations in the intelligence field. But out here, if you negotiate from a position of weakness, you're going to basically have to take what it is that the big firm or the government or the state's attorney is going to give. I don't try to become a bully because I can't. But many of the adversaries I go against are large law firms, big corporations, and a U.S. Attorney's Office that has hundreds of assistants and thousands of agents. And so I am not going to go in and basically beg. I'm going to go in and represent the best interests of my clients. If the person on the other side thinks that I'm being too gruff, that's not my concern. What I'm concerned about is the best interest of the client. At the end of the day, or the end of the case, if the client believes that I protected his or her best interest, regardless of what happens, I'm satisfied. I don't care about what the other lawyer thinks. I don't care, quite frankly, whether the judge likes me or not. But I found that when I pursue the best interest of my clients and do use ethical procedures and methods to do it, the judges respect you, the opposing counsel respects you, and certainly, most importantly to me, my client respects me, and I respect myself. My cases come from primarily referrals from other lawyers and judges. I don't use the yellow pages. We just got into this website situation. But I love the fact that I'll receive a call from a potential client, and he or she will explain that they have a relative that's a state's attorney. And that relative made them promise not to tell me who they are, and that they're coming, they want to come see me. Or a judge will send a family member or send a close friend. And that is a signal to me that whatever it is I'm doing is, number one, ethical, and number two, there are others that appreciate you fighting to the last blow in the interest of the person who's sitting next to you.
Well, let me ask you about some of the things that, you know, you say fighting, you use the word fighting, and again, there are some things that you've said you've been quoted in the press. For example, you've been quoted saying the problem with lawyering in Chicago is that there are certain rules that are set aside for black lawyers. There are certain cages that they put the black lawyer in terms of expectations, in terms of areas of practice, in terms of orientation.
Yes.
Is that the kind of thing that you think helps, you know, your clients by being so outspoken on, you know, saying black lawyers are being put in cages?
Well, I've got to be frank, and I am frank, and I'm going to frankly tell you that there's an expectation that a black lawyer not be aggressive. There's an expectation that a black judge not be confident. There's an expectation that African Americans in the criminal justice system basically take orders and don't give orders. Those are things that I never did well with, even in my favorite branch of the service. I was picked for my job because, number one, I appeared to be independent from all the testing given to me, and I proved them right. One of my favorite judges was Judge Sid Jones. I never had any cases directly in front of him, but his reputation was that Judge Sidney Jones Jr. was he was aggressive, or he was harsh, and what Judge Jones was, he demanded, from what I talked to, his reputation amongst African American and white lawyers who had a lot of practice before him, he demanded the type of respect that he should receive. He made lawyers go to trial that didn't want to go to trial. And he was no different than non-African American judges who not appreciated, but expected lawyers to be ready for their game and also to respect him. But because he would call lawyers to task, and he was African American, he got a bad rap. There are other judges who are African American who are the same way. Now, if he was a white judge, they'd say, "Oh, he's like Hubert Will was." He was like, and they'd name the names of the judges, and it would not be a derogatory label. It was that he was a very strict and a very a serious judge. But African American practitioners that act like that, they receive a label of being harsh or something of that nature, and many of us aren't. And our judges who stand up for their rights at being judges and presiding over hearing, they're viewed the same way. And it's not a fair equation. Put in cages, yes.
Well, but Bill, I understand you sticking up for black lawyers, and I understand black empowerment, and this is the 2000s, and that's all fine, well and good. But then, you go on and quote saying, well, Chicago, even though we have a huge black population, is still an Irish-run city, court
Yes.
system,
Yes.
prosecutorial system,
Yes.
police system. And those dynamics remain regardless of whether there are black people in key leadership positions. Now, how do you get from black empowerment, which I think most people would be okay with, by then saying here in the city of Chicago, it's run by the Irish? I mean, how does that help you or your practice or the sense of justice here in the city?
I am so glad that you found that quote. It was a while back and I thought it was buried. I am so glad you found it. That is, in fact, that's a quote that I'd like to be read in my services. When and if that happens a few decades from now. That is a statement that every African-American lawyer needs to read, and every white lawyer and every white judge and every black judge needs to read every morning, because it's the truth. We have had one African-American state's attorney in the history of Cook County. We've had dozens of Irish state's attorneys. We have one African-American chief judge. We've had dozens of chief judges, or many chief judges of the circuit court who are Irish. We have had no African-American governors. We have had one black mayor. We've had dozens of black mayors in the city. That's well and good, and that's a salute to the Irish in this city. And they are doing exactly what they should do for their own heritage and their own fulfillment for their community. The unfortunate thing about it is, when African Americans get in position, the first thing they do is try to be more diverse than others are with us. I have no problem with that, but they got to remember that they owe a responsibility to their community that they came from, just like others owe an alliance and a contribution to the community they came from. But this whole melting pot, at times the only one that melts is the African American who's put in a position of responsibility, either by election, appointment, or otherwise.
So are you saying then that the problems in the justice system that impact black people are the fault of black people or the fault of Irish? I'm not quite sure.
Okay, let me clarify.
Whose fault is it?
The criminal justice system in Cook County is a combination of factors that are problematic. Number one, criminal justice in Chicago and Cook County is, people that I trust, we refer to it as the just us syndrome, because it's just us when you go to court. I'm not suggesting that we don't have black criminals. We certainly do. I'm not suggesting that we don't have black people that need to go to jail and don't come out of jail. What I'm suggesting is that the system is not set up equally concerning people that are subject to its jurisdiction. One example, in a traffic stop, which happens more frequently in African American communities, if you look at the statistics, that young person that has the contact with law enforcement is more likely to be taken into custody and not chastised and released. It will also, if the African American involved is an adult, the same is true. When they go to court for whatever they go to court for, whether it's a traffic violation or something else, the African American is more likely to be facing a white judge, a white prosecutor, and when the matter goes up on appeal, he will have a white attorney by way of the state appellate system. There are some changes in the Cook County Public Defender Office since Randy Stone started it, then Rita Fry, and now we have Edwin Burnett, who are African Americans, and they have made an attempt to make sure that African Americans are included on public defender staffs throughout the court system. But having seen the dynamics, and I go to 26th Street at least, I'd say 3 times a week, 2 or 3 times a week.
The criminal courts building.
Criminal courts building, 26 in California. I also go to the federal court building. It amazes me when you go to courtrooms and there are no white defendants in Cook County. I will go to outlying courts, and it's refreshing because at least when I go to another county, I'm calling the case, there are some white defendants. And it's not all by accident. There are numbers of people who are not African American to commit crimes. Those kind of crimes sometimes get resolved otherwise. But when you're an African American, whether you are a young person, a middle class person, a poor person, a not so poor person, a professional person, the system does not have the same feelings about you as they do others.
But Bill, let me ask you, you were the president of the Cook County Bar Association, the oldest, the largest, most prestigious black bar association, in the country. There are hundreds of black lawyers, if not thousands of black lawyers in this city. It's nice to point the finger at everybody else, but what blame do black lawyers and black judges share for the problems that you're talking about?